Welcome to the Visibility Project Podcast.
Welcome to the Visibility Project Podcast.
Welcome to the Visibility Project Podcast.
Started by a group of citizens in a small Michigan town with a like-minded goal
of increasing the visibility
of the unseen and unheard populations in our community.
Our guests will share stories and insights
with the goal of increasing our awareness and knowledge
of various aspects of diversity and equity
to create a more connected, empathetic, and inclusive community.
So, let's get to work.
Let's get to work.
So let's get to work.
So, let's get to work.
Let's get to work.
Welcome back to the Visibility Project Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremiah Lee. Spearheaded by the members of the Cultural Awareness Coalition, the project is the brainchild of several organizations and individuals with shared values who sit on a project steering team. We hope that the podcast series creates a deeper empathy for others and serves as a catalyst for people to actively create a more inclusive community and world. This month, we will be speaking with two guests who both have to overcome a physical disability on a daily basis. They are both extremely talented and intelligent people who will shed light on their own physical disabilities, stereotypes, and discrimination they have faced. One of our guests is Bart Maxon, who is a scientist at Dow. The other guest is actually the producer of the Visibility Project podcasts and has been instrumental in its success. Adam J. Salgat is the owner of Push Productions, which provides digital content for businesses while specializing in videography, photography, and podcast production. He has also worked for the Greater Midland Community Center for over 16 years. He started in a sales position and has now worked his way up to becoming their digital content specialist. Adam has produced award-winning videos, commercials, and hundreds of interactive social media posts, and sits on the board for Camp Fishtails, which is a retreat camp for those with cognitive and physical disabilities. He currently hosts a national podcast for the Chapman Foundation for Caring Communities, and is a producer for two other podcasts, including the Visibility Project. Listen close to his explanation of his business name and how he has done his best to find motivation through his difficult physical changes. Bart Maxon is a senior technical service and development scientist and has been with Dow for over 25 years in a variety of roles within home and personal care business. He has over 38 years of experience in the personal care, healthcare, and medical diagnostics industries, and is the global technical leader for two of Dow's priority beauty care customers. Bart has over 20 patents and has 2 Bachelor of Science degrees from Central Michigan University and Northeastern Illinois University. Bart is very active in various inclusion and diversity initiatives at Dow, and also serves on the board of directors for the Disability Network of Mid-Michigan. He is the co-founder and first chairperson of the Society of Cosmetic Chemists Michigan chapter. Bart will tell us about his experiences growing up as a 4'6" achondroplasia dwarf. He will also talk about his 6 spinal surgeries and how he has had to use a walker for mobility since 2009. Well, welcome, Adam and Bart. So happy that you're both here to join us today. And Adam, Adam is usually behind the scenes with us every episode. He is our producer of the Visibility Project. He's usually pulling the strings behind all of our interviews, but today he's going to be a guest for us. So welcome, Adam and Bart.
Oh, thank you.
Nice to be here. Thanks.
I'm going to start with you, Bart. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself outside of work? What do you do in your day-to-day life, and what are you passionate about?
Sure. Outside of my day job at Dow, with respect to my outside life, outside of work, it's kind of hard because things are so interconnected with each other with my work at Dow. I'm married for the second time. Between my wife and I, I've got 9 young adults and 8 grandchildren and 2 more on the way. We've got 2 chihuahuas and a lot of cats. We've got 7 cats. I'm also involved a lot in the Society of Cosmetic Chemists. And also, I'm a board member of the Disability Network of Mid-Michigan. At home, we like to watch a lot of game shows and just spend a lot of time chilling and sharing each other's company. Foremost, I'm really passionate about my wife and my family. Then I would say work and what we're doing at Dow. I'm a huge fan of the music group Journey, and I also love contemporary music and contemporary worship. And I'm a huge fan of Michael W. Smith and Jim Daneker. That kind of music really inspires me. But I'm also a fan of the Tigers, the Red Wings, and also the Green Bay Packers.
Awesome. Adam, how about you?
Well, outside of my work, I am a father of three. I've been married to my wife approaching 10 years. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. There's no doubt about that. And I have three, like I mentioned, three little girls. Love spending time with them. Summer is is our favorite season, honestly, because it's a lot easier with three kids under 5 to go out. To go out and do things. So summertime is one of our favorites. We really enjoy going out on bike rides and spending time at the beach. Family is very important to me. It's definitely one of the elements that has only been strengthened in my relationship with my wife. So the family background that I have, the family background that she has, those are two things I'm definitely passionate about. And it might sound a little cheesy, but I really do enjoy the work that I do. I am passionate about creating content, about being able to share stories. I don't often feel like I'm at work when I'm working. And I know that's one of the old adages that people say. So I guess I'm blessed in that way, and I'm very thankful for it.
Well, we're very blessed to have you as a part of Visibility Project, and I'm so happy that both of you are here with us today. So we're going to talk today about physical disabilities. So can you both discuss more about your personal physical disabilities? I'm going to start with you, Adam, on this one. Can you give us a background on you?
Yes, sir. My physical disability is a hereditary disease. It's called Charcot-Marie-Tooth. I'm going to read the definition because and then I'll kind of elaborate on that. But Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease is a group of inherited disorders that cause nerve damage. This nerve damage is mostly in the arms and legs and causes sensory neuropathy. So essentially, what's happening for me and what has been a degenerative disorder as I've gotten older, I have lost muscle in my ankles, my feet, my hands and my wrists and my arms. Also lost muscle in my calves and my legs. So we'll get into what this looks like a little bit more, but certain difficulties mean I don't have very good dexterity in my hands. So for example, I've always joked that shirt buttons are like my arch nemesis. I'm not a fan of having to button up shirts. So I don't wear dress shirts a lot. And when I do, most of the time I pull them over like a t-shirt.
Not going to lie. Now that you say this, I've noticed you're all usually wearing hoodies. So that's
well, that's partially because I work in my basement and it's about 10 degrees colder down.
That too, I guess. But
no, I'm not against dressing up. It's just one of those elements that it does become a little more difficult. And oftentimes in my life, and we'll talk about this, I ask people for help when I need it. So if I go to work and I wear a dress shirt and then I change into gym clothes to go do workout and then I change back, I've asked ladies in the office or even gentlemen when I've needed to button that top button for me just so I'm kind of back. And I've also used different devices to help with things like that. The biggest element I'd say for me when it comes to dealing with disability and what you need to know about it, it does make things more difficult. I used to be able to run, but I can't run anymore. I used to be able to even jump a little bit and I can't do that anymore. I never at one point in my life had to wear ankle braces to help deal with a foot drop disorder, but now I do basically daily. Those are the issues that come into play. So if I'm painting the picture, those are some of the difficulties that are out there. But as we will get into, you find ways to adapt. So,
well, thank you for sharing, Adam.
Yep.
Bart, can you maybe discuss a little bit about your personal physical disabilities and give us a little more insight?
Sure. I'm a 4 foot 6 inch tall dwarf and was born with achondroplasia dwarfism. Achondroplasia is one of over 200 types of dwarfism and is the most common type. It happens anywhere from 1 to 20,000 to 1 to 40,000 births and results from a genetic mutation with a specific chromosome that affects the growth of the long bones. The individuals with achondroplasia will have a normal sized trunk, but extremely short arms and legs. Dwarfs are prone to, or achondroplasia dwarfs in particular, are prone to spinal or back issues due to the curvature of the spine, but then also the narrowing of the vertebrae around the spinal column and the spinal cord, which pinches it off. So you've got spinal stenosis.
Now you mentioned that this is your particular kind of dwarfism. Are there other types of dwarfism as well?
As indicated, there's over 200 different types. There's pituitary type of dwarfism, and there's a whole list of the different types. And each type is a little bit different as far as the proportionality of the individuals. Like I said, if I'm sitting up, if somebody's sitting across the table from me, it's very, very difficult for them to tell that I'm a little person or a dwarf. With other types of dwarfism, you may get somebody that has a pituitary type of dwarfism, and they are totally small.
I see.
So they would need a booster chair or something like that.
Well, thank you for sharing, Bart.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask both of you now a little bit more, talk a little bit more about what it was like growing up with a physical disability. So can you maybe talk to me a little bit about like how you were raised and how are you were expected and how you were taught to function in the world when you have these disabilities? I'll open this up to either of you in this one.
Wouldn't mind jumping first, just simply.
Sure, go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, it's interesting. That question made me think about what it was like. And like I said, mine's been degenerative. So, for example, growing up, I wasn't that different from other kids, or I wasn't that different trying to play sports or spending time doing things at other kids' houses or anything like that. It was different for me. It wasn't as blatant, let's say. It wasn't as noticeable. And so growing up, I didn't have that type of pressure or type of, for lack of a better word, hate put on me. I didn't have people making fun of me. I didn't have people looking at me and mocking in any kind of way. We knew, though, when I was young, we knew that I was going to be affected by this and it was going to come, essentially. And even when I was 18, 19, it was starting to show up. But like I said, at a young, early age, it wasn't showing nearly in any way. I played t-ball, played basketball with guys, in school. It was not, there wasn't a lot of talk about it. But the example that was put in front of me is I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and this type of disease affects the X chromosome most directly. My brother, who is 16 years older, I saw him living with it when I was, the age of 12. He's in his late 20s, and I saw him living with it and him opening mason jars a certain way or picking up forks a certain way or holding things a certain way and all these little things, right? So I was pretty observant to that, and not only observant to the physical side, but also the emotional side. I saw him get frustrated and I saw him have to deal with that. There were these things that happened that I got to see at a young age that I knew I either wanted to find ways to overcome or wanted to find ways to accept. And there wasn't this direct talk about, hey, this is what it's going to be like to deal with it. But he set a very good example of, even if you're frustrated, even if you're mad, you keep going. He told me one time when he was in the Army briefly, which he was honorably discharged because he couldn't handle the physical side of it. And that's when my family actually started to learn about our disease most directly. But he told me that a drill sergeant said to him, you can lay in the dirt and die here, or you can get up and keep going. He kind of, even though I saw him be upset, in his 20s, really learning to adapt to this and me viewing it when I was young, he really set that example of, you pick yourself up, you keep moving however you can. Like if it's incremental, small inches at a time, that's what you do. Like forward motion is important. So I don't have some of the same type of stories I know I read in your bio, Bart, that you're going to share. So I'll kind of hand it back over to you because I am interested to hear a little bit about what it was like growing up and visibly being different from an early age.
Yeah, Bart, that's a great segue. Can you tell us more about what it was like for you growing up?
I guess, and the difference between mine and Adam's story is that my parents knew that I was an achondroplasia dwarf probably a couple months after I was born. And because of some of the characteristics of the dwarfism that I have, a larger head and things like that, some of the development is slower as far as physical development, crawling, standing up and walking like that. I personally didn't realize that I had a disability until I was in the 2nd or 3rd grade because, I was smaller than other people, but it was comparable, and then other kids started growing and I didn't. With respect to what was being expected or at home and things like that, I think I had a similar dad as Adam did as far as the drill sergeant goes, because they treated me like a normal, average kid. I was expected that I would function in an average size house. We had some adaptive equipment so I could reach light switches and things like that. But the countertops were high. The toilets were high. The tables were high and things like that. I had responsibilities and chores like other kids. I had to do my job. And I was also taught to respect others, but also do the best I can. And if I started something, I wasn't going to quit. Because back then, if you started something, you don't quit. You signed up for it, and my parents had the same type of mentality as Adam's. Then, with respect, I think, to you can either lay there, die, or you can get up and move your butt. And that's kind of what I did. I was kind of a lone wolf, though, because I'd never seen a little person before in my life. My brother and sister are both on the taller side. My brother was a all-state kicker, and my sister was an all-state volleyball player. My parents were both normal size. A lot of people don't realize that most dwarfs are born to people of average size stature. So I had to learn. I had to adapt. But because my family, my parents were so focused on sports and competition, I had to compete. And so I became very, very competitive. And I had to show people what I could do. And that still is kind of who I am today, or part of who I am today. So,
what type of things did you do to compete in as a kid then? Like, what brought out that competitive side for you?
Well, again, sports was a lot of it. My parents were very good, though, as far as sending me out. I mean, I played neighborhood baseball, football. I mean, I was always getting my butt kicked with people twice my size. Basketball, I remember being the biggest kid in our class in basketball and one-on-one back in 6th grade. I would throw up a brick and then run around him. He was a little slow. But then they also let me do other things. Band. I was in Boy Scouts, so I went camping. I attained the rank of Eagle Scout because of some of that competitive nature like that. And then that actually then went farther into high school. Then when I couldn't compete, like at the school level, but I was an athletic trainer there for various sports, basketball, baseball, football, and wrestling. But then I did play intramural basketball and volleyball. And when I was a senior, we won the intramural championship.
Cool.
I jumped center in the championship game and the beginning of the second half. So that's kind of how I was. And I was really lucky to have parents that really didn't hold me back and shelter me, I guess.
Talking about family, I'm going to transition a little bit to a little more talk about your families. I mean, you both talked about how important your families have been to you. I'm going to ask this question specifically then. How has having a physical disability impacted you and having and raising a family? Or has it not?
I'll jump in. It certainly has. And it was an element that when I started dating my wife and I knew that she wanted to have kids, I was never really sure if I wanted to have children. And it was mostly to do with the idea of like, it's difficult enough to handle myself. Not that it's impossible. It's just, I struggle with things. So adding a kid to that space is not going to be the easiest. I came to the realization just kind of through, I guess, self-reflection and talking to people in general. When I feel my best and when I'm doing my best is when I'm helping others. So I thought, well, there's no one in my life who's probably going to need me more for at least a good stretch of their life than a child, than a kid. And like I said, my wife is awesome. She handles a lot of things knowing that I can't necessarily do them. So she'll do a little bit more of the physical activity with the kids. And, when it comes to running or that kind of thing. But, I go down the trampoline still and I bounce around and I play with them. And so I absolutely do what I can. But it is difficult sometimes to know that there may never be a chance for me to run with my kids, to truly be able to play sports or play tag with them. That it is a hard thing to swallow, especially since I am actually, and we've talked about sports. It's interesting, the connection that we both seem to have to it, but I grew up a really big sports fan and I still am. I love the competitive nature. I love the idea of you against me. Let's settle it on the field. There's no need to talk. Like that's just kind of, figure it, we'll settle it inside the game kind of thing. It is difficult, but I will say I couldn't have asked for a better partner, someone who knew she wanted to be a mother and she absolutely is perfect at it. And then knowing that even if I struggle, I can still give them so much. So even if I may never run a 5K with them or 1 mile or anything, we may bike ride, or I may be able to teach them how to swim. So there's elements that I still get to do, and you find solace and you find your happiness in those. And the ones that you struggle with, well, you do your best to let go of them and you just move forward. like I said. So I always knew it was going to be hard, but I also knew I really, once I got to that realization that there was going to be nobody who would need me more than a child, I was pretty gung ho about it. And I can tell you, we have 3 kids, 5, 2, and 6 months. And I love every one of them so much, and I wouldn't change anything about it.
Awesome. Bart, how about you? How has your having a disability impacted you having and raising a family? You've mentioned you have a large family, so.
Yeah. Well, I've actually got like 2 chapters with this one, because I had the initial family from my first wife, in which I considered my family life very, very normal. We had 3 beautiful daughters. One of them was short like me, and 2 were on the average. Again, now I'm blessed to have my extended family. I'm still dad to everybody, but now I'm dad to a bigger family of everybody. And then I'm also Grandpa Bart to the 8 grandchildren and the 2 more that are coming on that. With respect to what it was like, again, how Adam said, I was fortunate enough to be able to raise my 3 daughters, and we were very active in their school activities. We were very active in their sports. I would get home from work and my daughters would want to go outside and hit a softball or go fishing and do things. And I could run at that time. It wasn't until my 3rd back surgery out of 6, in which back in 2009, in which I then really became disabled and needed a walker and things like that. But then I was actually out there with a walker, sitting in a lawn chair, tossing softballs to my 1 daughter at the time. So to me, it was a normal. But as Adam also said, my current wife, Debbie, is just an amazing individual who accepts me for who I am. And the thing that really is kind of interesting, that it's kind of a hidden message behind our whole podcast here, is when I was in high school, I didn't mention this, but I had a nickname of Gimp. And I embraced that nickname. I had a T-shirt that said Gimp Power on it, and people called me Gimp down the hallway. 40 years later, I meet this lady because I won't say where I met her. Well, it was a website, but I had Gimp as a profile name. And she's like, I need to check this guy out. I need to fix this guy. What's wrong with this guy? And so we went out, and we've been together ever since. And about a month later, she's like, I never want to hear that nickname again. She's like, you're so much more than Gimp. How could you go through life with that? And that to me really speaks magnitudes of her. And I got the same feeling sometime as Adam does, because I always have a tendency to apologize if I can't do something. I'm sorry. And she's like, really? Just stop it. And just an amazing individual, and just giving. And like I say, I'm just blessed. So.
And you said you had this nickname. Did you embrace it throughout your life, or was it told to you as like in an affectionate way by your peers, or how? Like
it was actually told to me. My brother and his friends created it for me.
Okay,
I was in 10th grade or 11th grade. My brother is 2 years younger than me. I didn't really think about it, and I would be running down the hallway in high school, and people would say Gimp. And it stuck through me through college, and my daughters never called me that or anything like that. I mean, once I grew up, but throughout those college years, I always felt, well, and I won't say that I always felt, but it just kind of stuck with me. And there was a hidden understanding that you maybe are a little bit less, but I'm not. It took me, like I said, 40 years to realize that. So.
Wow, that's impactful. So what reality do you face due to your disability on a day-to-day basis? Adam, do you want to start on this? And you alluded to a little bit about shirts and things like this, but are there other things that maybe are challenges or barriers to you?
Let's see. The toys on the floor that my kids I have a tendency to leave around. But I say that jokingly, but there's some truth to it, because walking through them or being careful not to step on them, the lack of muscle in my lower half causes stability issues or balance issues. So those are elements that, on a day-to-day basis are there. They're not completely debilitating. They're just maybe more of a nuisance or more of a conscious awareness. So you're careful. I think that's one of the elements that that maybe people who don't deal with a physical disability don't always realize that. And Bart, maybe you can back me up. I don't know, but I feel like there's a cognitive awareness, a constant cognitive awareness of what's happening around you. So you keep yourself safe, or keep, if I'm holding a baby, like my 6-month-old, I'm keeping track of what's happening around me. So I'm in a safe position and I'm keeping everything in control. I don't know if you can make reference to that at all.
Yeah, definitely. I can make reference to it. And with respect to my day-to-day stuff, I mean, right now I can't walk without a walker. And, that happened in 2009 because of the back surgery that went bad. But prior to that, I mean, I was climbing shelves at Walmart or whatever just to grab something off of a higher shelf. I would throw boxes of cereal up there to knock another box down, and adapt. I worked at Burger King in my college years, and I stood on a milk crate. I did my organic chemistry in my labs at Central Michigan University on a stool or a platform. So I've always been able to adapt. With taking it a step farther and the disability getting a little bit worse because of the 6 back surgeries, it's really limited what I can do day to day versus other things. Plus, beyond not being able to walk, just the height differences and things like that. You go into some airport restrooms and you can't reach the sink in some of those. So there's that aspect plus the disability aspect, and it's just kind of cumulative.
In reference to work, by the way, that is one thing that I do love about my current work situation is a lot of my work can be done at a computer, at a desk. And when I do need to go out into the world, to shoot video or to take photos, right now it's still fully manageable. It may take me a little longer. I don't walk as fast. I don't move as quick, things like that. But it is fully manageable. You mentioned, by the way, working Burger King. I worked at McDonald's when I was 16, 17, and things were, I didn't have the same kind of necessities that you did to perform your job, but I do remember doing things certain ways and people occasionally looking at me, gripping a spatula a certain way,
yeah.
or grabbing hamburger buns or whatever it might be. And, but like you mentioned, you adapt, you find the way that works for you to get the job done. And 99% of the time, it's not going to be any different than if someone had done it the atypical way. They don't,
right.
In the end, you don't know.
I hear a common theme from both of you. It's just about acknowledging that there's, these physical disabilities, but also adapting and overcoming. You're not laying in the dirt. You're getting up and moving forward and progressing. So, outside of your day-to-day, addressing these, what about maybe in public? So you guys are doing, everything you can to overcome these. But have there been instances where you've had barriers put in place, either personally or professionally? Not only barriers, but potentially discrimination. Have either of you encountered this as a part of your disabilities?
I'll answer this quickly because I'll say I have had less years of this being a major element. There has not been a direct instance where these have come into play. Do I feel at times when I'm walking through the mall with my kids, or if I'm trying to do something in a public place with them, do I imagine that people are kind of wondering themselves, well, he moves a little different, or he's, what are those leg braces are about, or, any of these kinds of things. I'm sure that happens. And then when it comes, I don't know. Most of the time people it's not an issue, I should say. And then when it comes to anything work related, I don't believe I've been discriminated against when it comes to, a gig. I've got it on my website when it comes to my small business, and, that because I'm proud of it. And it's actually part of my business name. And maybe I'll tell that story later. If I've ever worked with somebody, they didn't hire me back. If they didn't hire me back, it was potentially because they just maybe went in a different direction. I don't think that my disability has ever come into direct play when it came into production.
Can you touch on, before we pass the bar, can you touch on that company name now? And
Sure. Yeah. My business name is Push Productions. And in my mid-20s, when I was struggling with, seeing my hands start to deform is too strong of a word, but, they start to curl. My fingers started to curl. And basically in my mid-20s, when my body was changing a lot, it was hard sometimes to remind yourself to get out of the dirt, right? So one of the things I started doing when I would get out of the shower in my apartment, and I vividly remember this, is I started wiping the motivation word push into the foggy mirror. So then when I saw it later in the day, or even in those moments of getting dressed in the morning, it reminded me to push forward, to push on whatever concept you take with that word. For me, it's the idea of continuing to move forward. You keep pushing no matter what. So that's what Push Productions is. I like alliteration too, so that doesn't hurt. But I'm a big comic book fan, and Peter Parker and Clark Kent. But the concept of continuing to push forward, and it was that reminder, because in my mid-20s, it was a struggle. There are times when you're just saying to yourself, "Oh, I guess I'm glad I'm not in this situation. Like, I guess I'm not completely debilitated, or I have all my cognitive awareness." But at the same time, you're like, you know what? Screw everybody else. This sucks right now. This is really hard. And you just sometimes got to remind yourself, though, everybody does have a cross to bear, whether you can see it or not see it. There's plenty of people who struggle with depression or bipolar disorders, and I can't see those as blatantly as I can see my disabilities or what Bart has to deal with. So everybody's got a little bit of something, and sometimes it's a lot, and you just keep pushing forward. And that's was my motivation word in my 20s, and it's really continued to help me grow in my late 30s now.
Wow, thanks for sharing. That's so impactful, and I can't believe I never knew this. That the reason behind the Push Production. So.
Very cool
Bart,
story.
Yeah, Bart, can you talk about maybe some barriers you've encountered personally, professionally, or discrimination you faced?
Sure. There continues to be a lot of stigma and discrimination associated with being a dwarf in today's society. Too often, dwarfs are ridiculed, made fun of in society. You've got dwarf tossing, things like that, just comical things that aren't very comical. But some of our biggest challenges are really the assumptions that we can't do something. My example is really, I went to Central Michigan University. I graduated with a 4-year degree with a biology and chemistry, Bachelor of Science degree. I was smart enough to get a degree, and I started sending out resumes after resumes after resumes. And included in that resume cover letter, I would say, I am a little person, or I am a dwarf. I am a 4'6" dwarf. And I got rejection letter after rejection letter after rejection. Along with that, I was working with the state of Michigan employment agency. It was supposed to help me get good career and a good job. But they were sending me on interviews like third shift liquor store, fast food restaurants that I could apply on my own because I had experience at Burger King and things like that. And then finally, they sent me on an interview for a chemical company. And so I was really fired up for the interview. I'm like, yeah, good. I got an interview. And I showed up at the company, and the owner of the company came in. I was all dressed up in my suit and things like that. He comes in and says, "Well, Jerry wanted me to talk to you." He says, "I don't have a job here for you." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "I'm here to tell you that you're never going to get hired by somebody in a lab. So go back to school, get a word processing degree, and why don't you write textbooks?" And that was the end of my interview. Well, except a couple of expletives that I kind of mumbled to them at the time. And I mean, I was hurt. I was disappointed. I was stunned. I couldn't believe what I just went through. I drove an hour plus for this thing. And I called the guy at the state and said, "Don't you ever send me on an interview like that again." I said, somebody's going to hire me. I have faith. Somebody's going to hire me. And a month later, I went down to a job fair in Chicago, and there was a small chemical company down there. And I walked up to their table. The guy says, "Can you run a gas chromatograph?" I'm like, "Sure." Showed him my resume. I talked to him for about 15 minutes, and he called me in for an interview, and they ended up taking a chance on me and hiring me. And so, I worked at Abbott Laboratories in the diagnostics division. And when my oldest daughter was born, we wanted to relocate back to Michigan. And so I was fortunate to move to Michigan, and eventually got into Dow Corning, and then got integrated into Dow Chemical. And in there, I've had certain roles and things like that. And I just wish that I could go back and tell that guy and show him my resume now, how many patents I've got, and things like that, and what he missed. So
I I can only imagine the amount of how much of an impact you've had on your company's bottom line too. So to be able to show that recruiter back in the day, like, well, this is what you missed out on, would be
well. And the other thing that I've always often laughed about was people remember me because of my height. People remember my name because of my height. Right? Here comes Bart. Here comes Bart from Dow. He's here. And I always told myself, they're going to remember me one way or the other. You better remember me for doing a good job versus a bad job. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of pushed me more to further succeed and go a little bit above and beyond with them. So,
well, thank you for sharing that, Bart. And just goes to show like your talent and the fact that somebody was that those people weren't willing to take a chance on you, and then what a regret it should make of them. Like just
well, the days were different back then too. I think. Right? I mean, with the whole inclusion and diversity aspect, and Dow was really, really good, and from an inclusion and diversity aspect, and I'm heavily involved in a lot of their programs there. So.
Thanks for sharing. Hey, Adam, I'm going to circle back to something you alluded to earlier. I was talking about the emotional impact of the physical disability. So can you both talk about it? Has there been a mental or emotional impact of your physical disability? Adam, you alluded to it earlier a bit, so I'll start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's silly to not assume it's there every day, but at the same time, it's easier than what it was 12 years ago when, I could look at my hands and feet and think, they're going to change, or eventually I'm going to need a brace or something like that. So back then it was hard because even though it was small incremental changes, it was, you had to find this level of acceptance or else you were going to be bitter. And I knew I didn't want to be bitter. I knew that I didn't want to grow up not enjoying what I could out of life. I knew I didn't want to set limitations too small because I felt like it was going to be difficult. So the emotional side is just occasionally, it still gets me, like even now thinking about maybe struggling to do certain things with my kids as they get older. But at the same time, I'll know I can be there in other ways. I can be there to help them grow emotionally. I can be there to help them grow intellectually. I can help when it comes to certain things physically, whether that might be needing to go to a gym to do it, or it might need to be hiring a baseball coach or a softball coach or volleyball coach or whatever it might be. I want to be able to support them. And sometimes that might mean looking for external help. The emotional element of all of it, though, if you do not, in my opinion, this is my opinion, if you do not find a way to work through it, accept it, and push past it, it could easily eat you alive, and it could easily turn you into someone that you don't want to become. So you have to think about what it takes to get through that, what it takes to accept those things, and how to do that. And there's been a communications course that I've been through in my life that has continued to reiterate those things. It can be very difficult, but you can also get through it, no matter what it is, whether it's physical, mental, addiction. It could be many, many different things.
Now, Bart, I know our listeners can't see it, but I could see you like really nodding your head while Adam was talking.
Oh, yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about like the mental and emotional impacts that you felt throughout your life?
The mental and emotional impact of my disability has been ingrained on me for a long, long time. Again, you've got the competitive nature behind that, but then also there's a thick skin associated with it. Since my disability and my dwarfism is noticeable every time I go out in the public, it was noticeable when I was in elementary school, when kids would try to pat me on the head or pick me up and things like that. You hear the term midget instead of, which is very, very derogatory, versus the more politically correct terminology, which would be a dwarf or a little person. Midget is the taboo word for a dwarf or a little person like that. And I don't know how many times I've gone out with my family, and people are yelling midget or this and that. And you kind of get a thick skin because of it. With the advent of these cell phones now, that's even gotten a little bit worse because now people start taking pictures and videos. My daughter is a school teacher up north, and I know that she's caught people taking videos of her and stuff like that. And, it really is kind of a circus atmosphere type when you go out in the public on that. So you do get thick-skinned. You can get protective. I've mellowed in my years. I got very angry when I was younger. So there's that whole emotional piece in society as far, because if you're overweight or tall, excessively tall or something like that, okay, you get picked on, but not the shaming as you would as if you go into a store. And this was especially hard for me. We had a couple situations when my 3 daughters were younger, and we would go into a store or we would go to a sporting event, and somebody flat out asked my wife, I can't believe that you had the audacity to have any kids, to me. And I just wanted to go through the roof at that point.
Understandably.
Yeah, you're right. And so there was a lot of that afterwards. But then, like Adam said, though, you get comfortable with who you are. This is who I am. This is my disability. I've overcome. Look at how much I've overcome on this. And I am succeeding. And the other thing about dwarfism, which is interesting, is everybody fits the little person to the world as it is. But if you went to a little person or a dwarf's house that has been modified, their tables would be low, their toilet would be low, and individuals that came to that house would be complaining about their facilities and not their own height differences. That was a story that Len Swasich had told me at a LPA meeting years and years ago. And it's very interesting because if you look at my journey, and like Adam said, you look at individuals and you look at your position and say, how are you doing? I went to a Little People of America meeting back in 1975, and I was in the back row of the group picture. And there were individuals with wheelchairs, walkers, up to my chest. And that opened my eyes. And I met a couple different individuals. One was a chemist from DuPont. The other one was a gentleman by the name of Lee Kitchens, who was one of the inventors on the original, or some of the original Texas Instruments TI calculators. And he was a little person. You had that aspect of the mental struggle. But then, like I said, I've got 2 chapters to my life. The second chapter then was when I had the back surgery in 2009. I couldn't walk. I was disabled. And then I truly considered myself a disabled person. And then there's that mental struggle of pain, frustration, anger, and then eventually acceptance. And, when you're trying to bargain, let me walk a little bit. Let me walk 50 feet. Let me walk without the walker, And then you finally get to the acceptance point where, okay, I'm going to live like this, and I'm not going to lay here and die, and I'm going to kick some butt, and I'm going to keep on going, and I'm still going to keep on kicking. And so that's kind of where we're at.
I just wanted to say one more thing about mental emotional impact, and in that it was vital for me in my 20s to have a close-knit group of friends that helped me through a lot of issues. They accepted me for who I was. They accepted that I was going through some changes. They accepted how I might do things a little differently. A couple close-knit friends from high school that I'm still good best friends with today that have always done that and have been helpers. So I just wanted to say, to get through that mental emotional part, the people around you make a huge difference as well.
Well, thanks for that. So we're running short on time, but I want to ask both of you today. Well, I want to thank both of you for being here, but what would be your final words to our listeners? What would be some final advice or any call to action you have for our listeners? What's your final words to our listeners after today's talk?
I know sometimes people may wonder if they should jump in and help someone with a physical disability. Go for it. Don't be afraid to ask, because I will tell you 90% of the time, it's totally fine to ask. It's the same as anyone else who might be struggling with something. If they want your help, they'll say it. If they don't want your help, they'll handle it. So don't be afraid to ask them. And then I think, Bart mentioned music earlier, and there's always been a line from a song that sticks out in my head that been encouraging to me. And it is, even through the darkest days, this fire burns always. And the idea there is pretty straightforward. No matter what is in front of you, just keep pushing, keep that fire burning and keep going. And when you do need help, don't be afraid to ask for it.
Awesome. Bart?
Those are perfect words, Adam. And I totally agree with you with respect to the help. Go help people, offer to help. But if they refuse to help, don't insist, because I've seen situations where individuals have said, here, I'm going to help you one way or the other, and has not been good for either party on that. From my perspective, what I would like to say is if you see a little person or somebody with a disability, anybody with a disability in a store or out in public, don't start taking pictures with an iPhone. Don't start yelling derogatory things. If perchance you've got a child that is curious and wants to know something or says something inappropriate, don't take your grocery cart and run around the corner or hide behind the clothes rack, because we can see and hear you. We are individuals. We're public people. It's okay to ask. It's okay to say, I'm sorry for my child, what he said. He doesn't understand. Tell me more about your story. Most people with disabilities and most little people in general will want to tell their story. And if they're approached in a respectful way, are very, very happy to share their story and how they got there.
Well, thank you both for being here today and telling us your story and telling us how you have overcome obstacles and your journey. So thank you both for being here today with us.
Awesome. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You can stay connected with the Visibility Project by subscribing, liking, and sharing on your favorite podcasting and social apps. Look for us at the Visibility PRJ.
Financial support is needed to keep the conversation going. Go to midlandfoundation.org/give and select the Cultural Awareness Coalition Endowment Fund to be part of the project. Note podcast in your donation notes.
Thank you for listening.
We see you.
We hear you.
And together, we are making a difference.